In order for you to change P1 to make it a better piece of work, we're looking at the ownership of businesses. The first part of the business case study that you're asked to fill in is the name of the business and the location of the business. Some people have put addresses that the business's head office is in. That's perfectly fine. If it's located in Pudsey, then you could be quite specific about where the business is located. The first two headings, though, should be reasonably straightforward. The second box, which is type of business, local, national, public and private. There are 4 options for you to choose from: local, national, international and global. All should be reasonably self-explanatory. International are businesses which operate in more than one country. Global are businesses that operate all around the world. So for example, Coca-Cola operates in pretty much every country around the world. There's only 2 countries around the world where Coca-Cola is not sold, whereas other businesses may just operate in the UK and also sell overseas. So one that springs to mind straight away is a bike company called Planet X, who sell overseas but don't operate on a global scale. That's the first distinction. The second one is this public and private. Public is where it is owned by everyone. So our school is a public business. Parks, councils, all of these sorts of things are owned by us all. Hospitals, fire brigade, police are all publicly owned organisations. Private are when they are owned by private individuals. We talk about public and private later on when we're referring to limited companies, but at this stage, is your business owned by us all, or is it a business that is owned by private individuals? That's the only distinction that you have to make. If you have written one sentence in this box, it's not enough. In each of the boxes, you have got to explain, if you pick local, why are you picking local? I am picking local because the organisation is only located in Pudsey. I am picking national because this business had offices in, and maybe tell us where the offices are. Tell me how many countries around the world it operates in. If you're picking international or if you're picking global. You could also, you could be a bit more detailed and tell us how many employees it's got. You could make this work a little bit better. Your best work is what I'm looking for every single time. And again, with public and private, it is a private organisation. This means that, and explain what these terms mean. The second part, business sector, and explain why. Some of you, this is a quick screenshot. This bit is a quick screenshot from GCSE Bite Size, trying to explain what the difference between primary, secondary and tertiary is. Primary, digging stuff out the ground. Secondary, turning it into something, and tertiary, selling goods or services. It should be reasonably easy to categorise your business, but I want you to explain why you've picked the category that you have. So if you've done Crawshaw School, are we primary, secondary or tertiary? Some of you have been quite clever and you've recognised that your organisation maybe does a bit of secondary and also maybe does a bit of tertiary. Supermarkets are popular for this. So what you would describe it as is a tertiary business, because predominantly it provides a service, it sells goods. But you would then go on to say, however, it also does a little bit of secondary, and this is because they bake bread in the bakery. And that's really good for those people who've done that. But again, it's the explanation as to what these terms mean and why you've picked it for your organisation. The next one, the purpose of the business, i.e. why does it exist? Describe the activities of the business. I want to know what the business does. So if you've picked McDonald's, I want you to describe in reasonable detail what the business does. You would describe it as a restaurant, you describe it as fast food, whatever it might be, but I need you to tell me what the business does. You also need to mention, is it for profit or not for profit? Explain what is meant by those terms. Is it a business that's trying to make money, or is it a business which is not trying to make money, whether it's a charity or, again, in the case of Crawshaw School, we're not trying to make a profit. We're just there. We're a service which is there for the good of the local community. And again, supplying products or services. I've done another quick screen grab from GCSE Bite Size. Is your business supplying products, or is it supplying services? The difference is indicated on this slide, and you need to put this into your own words, a phrase I'll come back to a little bit later. The ownership type. This is where you need to put quite a bit of information in. There's a lot to talk about in here. The types of ownership that you can talk about are sole trader, partnerships, private and public limited companies, government departments, government agencies, worker cooperatives and charitable trusts. These all come from the unit content. Some of you have talked about franchises as well, and that's okay, but franchises will also be one of these types of business. So in the case of something like Burger King or McDonald's, let's use McDonald's. McDonald's is a PLC. It's a public limited company, but the individual stores, which are owned by individual people, might be limited companies. They could be sole traders, they might be partnerships, and that's something that you need to find out. Okay, but you need to tell me what it means. What is a sole trader? You need to get a definition from 2 or 3 different locations and put it in your own words. You then need to talk about limited and unlimited liability, and I think I've seen about one correct version of this, which I'll come back to in a second. So there are a few main types of ownership that you can talk about. A brief summary of the ones from what I looked at today. These would be the ones which would pretty much cover all of the businesses that you've chosen. However, I don't want you to just copy down this definition that's here. I want you to go away, look in the textbooks, look at various sources, not just Wikipedia, and find out definitions of these terms, and then put it together in your own words. Unlimited liability versus limited liability. When you open up a shop or any sort of organisation, it's likely to get bigger and then bigger still. Unlimited liability applies to sole traders or partnerships. So if you've identified your business as a sole trader or a partnership, it will have unlimited liability. There are certain exceptions. Some partnerships are allowed limited liability, but on the whole, your business will be, if it's a sole trader or a partnership, have unlimited liability. All that this means is that the business owner is responsible for paying any debts of the business. So if I opened up a shop in Pudsey and then it got into loads of debt, they could come round to my house, repossess the house that I own, take away the car, take away the TV, sell everything that I own in order to pay the debts of the business. The law doesn't see me and the shop as 2 separate things. It just sees us as one. If I owe money personally, then they can go to the shop and take things out of the shop. If the shop owes money, they can come to my house and take things from my house. That's unlimited liability. Now, as I said about businesses getting bigger and bigger and bigger, once they get too big, it's really important that there's an alternative to unlimited liability. Because if you're the owner, you don't want massive bills. And so, for example, a business like Tesco's could run up millions and millions of pounds worth of bills, which you can't expect the owner to have to pay. So, limited liability is like building a brick wall between you and your business. The law sees the owner and the shop as 2 separate entities. Therefore, if the owner owes money, they can't just walk into the shop or the business and take things out of the shop. And equally, if the shop owns money, they can't just go into the owner's house and start repossessing or taking away things to sell to pay the debt to the business. That can't happen. The next thing that's quite important, and why does that happen, is because although small businesses, probably sole traders and partnerships, might be owned by 1 or 2 people, or only a handful more, with sole traders, with bigger organisations, they are likely to be owned by lots and lots of different people. Limited companies and public limited companies, or LTDs and PLCs, have shareholders. These shareholders may be one person, or in the case of PLCs, it might be hundreds of thousands of different people who all own a piece of that business. And once you've started to bring shareholders into a business, you're never going to get a shareholder to invest in a business if they are risking unlimited liability. What you need to say to these shareholders is say, right, okay, you can invest £1,000, you can buy shares to the value of £1,000, and then all you ever risk losing is that £1,000. If the business gets into debt and you've got limited liability, then you will never have to pay more than you originally invested into the business. And that's why you can get businesses which would have hundreds of thousands of shareholders, because the only thing they risk is the money they originally invest into the business. If the business ends up running up loads and loads of debts, there's not going to be bailiffs coming round to your house trying to repossess your car to help pay off those bills. And that's the reason, or one of the reasons, that we have limited liability. Limited liability. PLCs and LTDs are likely to have limited liability. That's what the L stands for in both of those acronyms. Now, I said before that franchises, and the reason I've specified this is because I know at least 2 or 3 of you have done franchises. Franchises will have limited liability if they are a PLC or an LTD. And you'll need to find out, if you've referenced the franchise, you'll need to find out whether it is a PLC or an LTD before you can say that it has limited liability. All government-run businesses, or probably all government-run businesses and organisations, will have limited liability. If you imagine a situation such as a school, you couldn't expect the people who run the school, or even the owners of the school, which is everyone really, the government, to have to bail the school out if it ran up massive debts. So, you know, an NHS hospital, if it ran up huge debts, it has to be a cap on how much there could potentially be a liability for. And so this is why big businesses have limited liability, because sometimes these businesses can run up colossal debts. In the case of Tesco's, a recent story was that they had massive issue with their suppliers to the tune of about £263 million, where they felt that their suppliers were going to give them that money, and that money never came towards them. So for big organisations, we could be talking staggering amounts of money, and therefore it just wouldn't be possible, if these businesses go bust, to go around and try and get that amount of money. And therefore big businesses have limited liability when the investors of the business have their liability limited to the amount of money that they invest. So just to recap, in this ownership, I want to know what type of ownership. Is it a sole trader, a partnership, a private limited company, a public limited company, a government department or a government agency, a workers' cooperative or a charitable trust? Franchise isn't on there, and I know that at least 1 or 2 of you have done franchise, so don't be frightened of putting franchise on. But then you need to say, well, it is a franchise, but the main part of the business is a PLC or an LTD. You also then need to go on and explain what is liability, limited or unlimited. You need to explain it and explain how it applies to your business. What does it mean for that business? This is a sort of good, the bad and the ugly section of some of the work that I saw. I took some pictures of it just to give you some ideas of the kinds of things I want to see or don't want to see. This P87 is a sole trader because it is owned by one person. Also, it has unlimited liability, so if the business does go bankrupt and have to pay off any debt, then the owner can get their possessions taken off them to pay for any money that they owe. Apart from it being just one sentence when it could probably be 2, the sentiment is pretty okay, and it ticks the box really. You probably could say a little bit more about the sole trader, and maybe the description of unlimited liability could be helped possibly if you were to get a definition and put it in quotes so that you're not ripping it off from somewhere else, to say the definition of unlimited liability is this. In practice, this is what it means. That could just enhance this bit of work, but on the whole, this box is probably in the good section. This is in the bad and the ugly. Nationwide is spelled as 2 words here, but then spelled as 1 word there. So pick which one that you're going to use. You've capitalised national for no apparent reason. So Tesco's is a national business as they sell products nationwide, not worldwide. Okay, but what about local? Could you not just say these as they sell products nationwide, not locally? I'm not sure why you've compared it to worldwide. You've not explained what nationwide means. You've also left out public and private. You've not said whether it's a public business or a private business. In terms of the business sector, it's not really explained what tertiary is, because it just says that Tesco's receive food from farms. So do I. That doesn't put me in the tertiary sector. So what makes them a tertiary sector business? This one, as does secondary and tertiary, is quite a good example of somebody who's put together and explained why it's primary, why it's secondary, and why it's tertiary. But before you started with this, you could explain what each of the 3 sectors are. The primary sector is this, the secondary sector is this, the tertiary sector is this. Therefore, as there is. So it could even be a little bit better, but again, I'd probably accept that bit as a pass. This, right, okay. So if we're just going to rip stuff straight off from Wikipedia, that's a massive mistake. It's called cheating. Plagiarism, to give it a posher name. You cannot give me someone else's work, i.e. Wikipedia's, and pass it off as your own. This piece of work completely fails. The whole piece of work. You cannot plagiarise. So this needs to change. And it's an example of somebody who's gone to one source and gone, that'll do. There's words in there that I wouldn't put into a definition. You have to use multiple sources to work out what you want to say. Next one, Britain's spelt incorrectly, which is a bit of a shame, and it's spelt incorrectly all the way through. Morrison's is a national business. A national business is a business that is only organised, spelt wrong, in one country or nation and all over the country or nation. Morrison's is this type of business because it is only in Britain. What's said isn't too bad. How many stores does it have in Britain? Is it genuinely nationwide? They definitely got stores down south. It's worth checking out, and it would be useful if that sort of information was in here. But a couple of simple spelling mistakes are really, really disappointing and letting that piece of work down. This one, again, a couple of massive mistakes here. Doesn't mention whether it's limited liability or unlimited liability, it just says they are limited by shares. So it's not answered the question which is in the box. It says that Morrison's is a private limited company, which is incorporated under the laws of England and Wales. I don't know where this has come from, I've not even tried to look, but it's definitely been plagiarised. I'm pretty confident about that. But equally, at the bottom of this person's page was a business case study, and that was the last thing that was on their page. Now clearly that was the header for the next page, and to just see that on there demonstrates that the person who's done this just wasn't particularly bothered about this piece of work.